Hi guys! This video is gonna be all about my Procreate brush sets. As some of you may know, over the last months I've released my first two brush sets for Procreate, and I've been receiving many requests from you to show you how they behave and work in action, to show you how I use them in my work, and I also wanted to show you how you can use them. In case you're interested, I will leave a link below for the first 50 of you to get a 30% discount on all my brush sets and all my color palettes in my shop. So I like native Procreate brushes a lot and I use and enjoy them a lot, but over the years sometimes I felt like I needed some special touch to my work. I needed some very particular effect or brush with some very specific texture. So after years of working with Procreate, I made so many of the brushes. I decided to share those with you, and also I wanted to show you my favorite ones, and let's start. Okay, so I will just show you now what are my favorite brushes and pencils from the sketch toolkit, and I will show you how I use them in my illustrations. I will be using my Peru illustration that I did. So my favorite and basic tool that I use for all the sketches is the HB pencil. I like it because, I don't know if you can see that, its line is quite open, so it gives you a very organic feel to your drawings. So even on this very first stage of your drawing, when you sketch, you can get this very natural feeling that you will get with the normal traditional pencil. So the way it behaves, it can be a very fine line, but also when you incline the brush, it will give you more texture, and I use it a lot at the very beginning when I want to mark the darker spots and darker places in my illustrations. Another one that I enjoy a lot, and you will see it very often in my illustration, is this water brush pen. It's a very classic watery brush. It's like based on a round brush shape, and I use it a lot, especially to create some effects on the water. You can see that it's semi-transparent, so you can get a deeper effect when you overlay more and more color on top of the first layer. Another one that I like a lot is called Chunky Chalk, and I use it. It's a very thick brush with lots of texture, and I especially like to use it whenever I create a background for my illustration and I want to do it quickly with very quick brush strokes. So this one here is perfect for that. But I also like to use this brush in a final illustration, like for example here in the mountains. You can see that the edges of the brush leave you quite organic feel to it, which I like a lot. So all the mountains that I did here, that I made, are done with the Chunky Chalk brush. I also enjoy a lot using a brush called Charcoal Bar, mostly because of its shape. It can be very precise, but it also has some texture to it, which is what I like a lot, as I rarely use very closed brushes in my illustration. I just feel like the ones that have a little bit more texture to it give you a little bit more life to your work. Now, all those tools that you've got over here, those are very dry, so those were created based on my experience when working with very dry traditional medium like chalkboard, like graphite pens, and the overall effect when you draw and you can easily smudge over something. There is some residue maybe falling down from graphite pencils, and to recreate that very traditional feeling, I made those brushes, and those are chalk dust graphite bar, for example, with a very similar effect. I really like using those two, especially to add some extra texture to my drawings. I use these two a lot when I create a sky, for example, or some background, and I need some additional texture to it just to give it more depth and to make it a little bit more rich. Something I really like and enjoy using, these are those two. This is CHALKY Noise and SHADOWCASTER. SHADOWCASTER was named by my husband, which explains the name. CHALKY Noise, what it does, it also creates a little bit like the effect that you will get when smudging a head over a drawing made with pencil or with charcoal. I really like adding this effect and using this brush when I draw water, especially. The SHADOWCASTER is a very highly transparent pen. I guess you can't even see it now. But once again, you can overlay very easily more color on top, making it more opaque and simply making it darker. And I like using it especially when I want to introduce a very slight change of color, like a very slight adjustment to my illustration, and this brush is just perfect as it is for this kind of alterations. So now let me show you a little bit how I used them in actual illustrations. I don't know if you can see that, but I like creating very delicate gradients on the skies that I create to create more depth to the whole image. So this gradient over here was actually created with those two brushes, the CHALKY Noise and SHADOWCASTER, and by mixing them and adding very transparent delicate layers, this is the effect that I could obtain. To create all the hairy llamas, I played with different brushes. It was graphite pen that can create those very organic lines that are great for hair. I also used HB pencil because as you can see, I don't know if you know this illustration, but each of the llama has different expression. Each of the llama has also a very different, has some slight differences in the hair. So for example, here I used this one, which is HB pencil, which is a little bit more, which has more close texture, so that the llama seems softer. And so that were the brushes that I played with here. I also used those two to create all the background with all the lines and all the light that is overlaying over the hills. Let me show you, because I've got one illustration where I used a lot of water brush pen, which is another one from the sketch toolkit. All the effects and all the river I made here in the forest was done using water brush pen. It was really easy to create this illusion of light and of reflection in the water using only exclusively this one pen. So yeah, it was really useful and really helpful when creating this whole illustration. I also use it for some details in the background. Once again, it seems that chunky chalk goes very well with creating mountains. I use the same brush to create these very organic ways of adding shadows. Here I remember very well to create also slight gradient in the sky. I used once again the SHADOWCASTER, that is very helpful, mostly because the layers of color that it adds are very delicate, and it's really hard to destroy an illustration, to maybe mess it up with this brush, because it's very simple, it's very delicate, and it's very easy to gradually add some changes to the drawing. Over here you can see all those extra water splashes that many of us like to use a lot, and I made those using a dust brush. If I use a very big dust brush, I will get this very messy effect of splatters. Now all the foliage that I created and all this effect in the background, I created them using pastel pencil. So this one is also quite thick, but also has like a very nice open structure, open texture on the edges, which gives you a little bit of smoothness to your illustration. Okay, so let's move to the mixed media pack. This one, as we already know, contains a big variety of different tools with which normally you can apply paint to your illustrations and to your paintings. We've got oil brush, foam brush, but also some effects that you can add with the sponge. So I wanted to transform as many of the traditional media and the traditional media feeling into digital tools. And let me show you how I work with them. I will just switch to another illustration, maybe this one. So the first thing in this illustration, this is one of my most recent ones, is the funny effect that you can see here in the water. And I got this effect with the brush called Heavy Grain. So heavy grain brush can give you a very delicate effect, like here. I don't know if you can even see that. Something that almost reminds you like a little bit old school texture that you can add. But when you switch the brush size to a bigger one, you will see how the effect becomes a bit different. So this, for example, served me very well here in this underwater scene to create like those extra air bubbles and this really nice effect that you get underwater. So to create all my water scenes or underwater scenes, or to illustrate and show the surface of the water, I usually use all the brushes that are somehow water-based, if you can even say that, talking about digital tools. But here in this illustration, I used mostly gouache water base, and this one, once again, this is a very delicate pen that you can obtain very delicate results without having a huge change into your drawing. So this brush is quite close, but for example, it did a great job when I needed this something to help me with the light effect entering underwater. So once again, when you add extra layer of the brush of the color, you will get more intensified effect. I also think that this is a great tool if you want to create a gradient, which for all underwater scenes is great. It also works pretty well whenever I work on the sky and want my sky to be a little bit like have a very smooth changes of color and a very smooth gradient. I use this pen. It's called Gouache Water Base. Another one that I really like using to create very delicate changes and effects is called Watercolor Shadow. Let me show you. Another brush I want to show you from the mixed media pack, the one that I use a lot, is called Watercolor GLAZE, and I use it for all the details, like for example here, to show the variety of different semi-transparent plants underwater, and I think it was very, very helpful with that. To add another layer of color over all the characters I drew in the scene, I used flat watercolor, which is a very big, also almost transparent brush. And I don't know if you can see that, but it also can create a very nice, almost transparent layer if this is something that you need in your scene. Here, for example, with all the texture that you can see here is once again the heavy grain, but much smaller size. So this is the effect that it can give you. it reminds me a little bit of like light shimmering in the illustration, so I really like that effect. All the light that is on the bottom of the sea here in the scene, I created with basic brush. It's a very soft brush which leaves a very nice, very natural effect on the illustration. So apart from those more traditional brushes, there are also some extra ones that give you some extra effect. This one would be, for example, patina brush, which has a very funny and nice effect. This is something that when you, for example, varnish your traditional paintings or just add many different layers of paint, this is the more or less the effect that you will get. Okay, so that's all for today. I think I showed you all my favorite brushes, the ones I used the most. Let me know if you had a chance to try my Procreate brush sets and also my Procreate color palettes. I have so far 4 of those based on 4 seasons. So let me know. Thank you so much for watching the video. I hope it was helpful if you are thinking about getting the brushes, and I will see you the next week. Bye!